Did you see that a woman is going to leave $2.8 million to her pets rather than to her own children? My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm an estate planning and business law attorney with offices in Edina, Minnesota and New York City. And today we're going to look at a very interesting pet trust issue that's come up recently in the news. And it's not with somebody famous. For once, it's not a celebrity, but it's something we really want to take a look at. So if you're like me and you have pets at home, you often need to consider, do I have to leave something for them in my estate plan? Because unfortunately, the law can be very callous. The law doesn't treat our pets as individuals like they would children. They're not treated as a member of the family. In fact, they're treated as property. And while that may be offensive to you, and it is to me as well as a pet owner, you need to understand how that property law works when it comes to your inheritance and your pets. Now this week I saw a very interesting story that actually comes out of a different country. It comes out of China, where a Shanghai woman has announced that she is leaving $2.8 million of her estate to her cats and dogs directly, rather than to her own children. She's actually setting this up now while she's alive, which is interesting that it hits the news now, because normally we only find out about these kinds of situations after the person has passed away and the will gets submitted to a probate court. Now we have to understand that Chinese inheritance laws are different than we have here in the United States. And apparently the reason she's not going to leave the money to her children is because she's been sick and they never visit her. So, because they never visit their sick mother, these children are going to miss out on $2.8 million, and the beneficiaries are going to be this woman's cats and dogs. So obviously, China has different inheritance laws than we do here in the United States, so we don't have a direct correlation to how this woman is setting up her plan. Instead, here in the America, what we're going to use is what we call a pet trust. Now, if you follow the news, we've seen some famous pet trusts over the years. For example, Karl Lagerfeld left a lot of money to his cat. Michael Jackson left $2 million to his pet chimpanzee Bubbles. And of course, the big one that often comes up in this world, Leona Helmsley leaving $12 million to her dog named Trouble. And you don't have to be a famous celebrity, and you don't have to have millions of dollars to create a pet trust. So in fact, if you have a pet in your family and you want to make sure they're cared for after you're gone, a pet trust can be an important part of your estate plan. So the first thing we need to do is we need to identify what pets are going to be part of your trust. And there's going to be two ways to do this. First way to do this, you can identify the pets by name. Now, the downside to this is if you outlive one of these pets and they're no longer in your documents, they're no longer in your pet trust, then that pet trust may not be formed down the road. So let's say you have your dog Rover for now, and then Rover dies and you get a new dog. That new dog is not automatically in the pet trust if you've only named Rover as part of the pet trust. So the safer option, and what most of my clients do, is we specify any pets I have at the time of my death, any cats, any dogs, you may have horses, bunny rabbits, whatever pets you have, you can identify them as a class of animal or just generally as all of my pets. But we need to make sure, as part of a pet trust, we identify what pets are going to be covered by the trust. Next thing we need to do is we need to identify somebody to take care of the pets. So if you want them to be taken care of by a neighbor or by an individual, or you want a family member to be the one to take them on after you're gone, we need to identify that person in the pet trust. And we also want to have at least one or two backups just in case the first person is unable to be the caregiver. The next thing we need to do is identify an amount of money we want to leave to that caregiver. So while you may think you're doing a big benefit to somebody, you may be giving a great favor of your fantastic dog to your neighbor may not want the dog. And remember, the neighbor's going to have to pay for food, walk the dog, take care of the dog. So what we will normally do is give some kind of a stipend or some kind of money to the caregiver as a thank you for taking our beloved pet after we're gone. Now, once we've identified our caregiver and we've left them some money, we need to identify what assets we're going to leave for our pet's care. So again, there's going to be food costs, there's going to be vet bills, there's going to be other costs associated with your pet, and we want to make sure we're leaving behind ample money to take care of all of those costs as the pet lives on. So it's very different if we have a young puppy versus a 15-year-old dog, so the costs may be different. And actually, they may not be that different because the 15-year-old dog may be very expensive with a lot of vet care, whereas the puppy is just going for a yearly visit and just living life and is happy in the neighborhood. You also want to often identify a shelter that you would want your pets to go to in case no caregivers are able to take care of them. Now, this is important for many people to understand that there's a difference between kill shelters and no-kill shelters, and most of my clients will look for a no-kill shelter, which means that if a pet is adopted or given to a shelter, it will not be put down while living at the shelter. They will be able to either live out their days there or be adopted by a new family. You need to make this choice ahead of time as well, whether you want your pet to be able to live out their days at that shelter or whatever group they're going to live with, or do you want them to be able to be adopted by somebody else, maybe give them a new home with a new family. And if you're going to go with a shelter, you also should talk to them first and find out whether or not they have a donation requirement. So some shelters will actually have a sliding scale, depending upon what type of animal you have and how old they are, as to what kind of donation they require so that they can properly care for your pet, making sure they're buying food and taking care of them and keeping the shelter going. So these are important information that you need to figure out from that shelter before you just randomly sign up a shelter to take care of your pet. And the final step after we've identified all this information is we need to finally create the pet trust. So the pet trust can be created in one of two ways. We can create it in your will, which is called a testamentary trust, and that means that only when you die will that trust be created for the benefit of your pets. And going back to that first thing we talked about, this can be important where we have a will we make when we're young. We identify our pets generally so that if we die, whatever pets we have at the time of our death are covered by that pet trust. The second way to create a pet trust is actually a standalone trust. You can create it now while you're alive. It's currently in effect. You can put money into the trust. You can take money out of the trust. If you're creating a trust for other purposes, and you can watch some of the other videos for the various reasons why a trust may make sense for you, you can add a pet trust component to your standalone trust, just as you can add a pet trust component to your will, so that we know that if something happens to you, that your pets are taken care of and there's a proper system in place and it's properly funded to take care of those pets after you're gone. If you have more questions or you would like to get started creating a pet trust for you and your family, you can go to my website, andrewmayers.com. There's a red legal strategy session button on the front page. If you click that, you'll be taken to my scheduling page where we can find a convenient time for you and I to talk. We can have a legal strategy session, go through the various pet trust questions you may have, and talk about the best way to update or create an estate plan for you so we know your pets and their legacy are protected. If you like this video, you can hit the like button or the thumbs up button below. You can subscribe on YouTube. And remember, leaving a legacy for your pets is possible, but we want to make sure that we're getting the right planning so it's done correctly.